A woman walked into a veteran-owned gun shop with a highly specific order. The owner saw a hobbyist playing dress-up. He didn't see the elite warrior about to turn his world, and his pride, completely upside down. The bell above the door of Valhalla Arms chimed, a small, tinny sound quickly swallowed by the thick air within. Afternoon sun struggled through dusty blinds, striping the polished walnut floorboards like a cage. The place smelled of history and readiness, a potent blend of CLP gun oil, old leather, and cedarwood polish. Behind the main counter, Hank Donovan held court. A former Marine gunny, his graying flat-top haircut was as rigid as his opinions. A faded 1st Marine Division tattoo snaked out from under the rolled-up sleeve of his flannel shirt. He was in the middle of a story, his voice a gravelly baritone that expected and received attention. His audience, for men perched on stools or leaning against glass cases, were his regulars. Big Rick, a burly man in a come-and-take-it shirt, roared with laughter as Hank pantomimed a clumsy recruit fumbling with a magazine. The others, all silver-haired vets with the quiet confidence of men who had seen things, chuckled along. The bell's chime had announced her, but no one turned. Dr. Evelyn Eve Reed moved with a silence that contradicted her entry. At 38, she wore no makeup, her blonde hair pulled back into a severe, regulation-type bun that spoke of discipline, not style. She was dressed in functional charcoal gray cargo pants and a plain, dark blue merino wool shirt, practical, understated, and utterly failing to register on the room's masculine radar. She didn't interrupt. Instead, she began a slow, methodical survey of the high-end rifles mounted along the far wall. Her gaze was analytical, her movements economical. She paused at a Daniel Defense rifle, her fingers lightly tracing the line of the handguard before moving to an FN SCAR, her head tilted as if listening to its mechanics. She came to a stop before a magnificent 12 Malawian Kwacha's SPR, displayed like a holy relic under a dedicated spotlight. "So the kid asks me if the suppressor needs batteries," Big Rick boomed from the counter, setting off a new wave of laughter. Only one man didn't join in. Marcus, a former Air Force pararescue jumper with watchful eyes, sat slightly apart from the group. He'd noticed her the moment she walked in, the way her feet were perfectly balanced, the quiet efficiency of her survey. He watched her now, a flicker of professional curiosity in his gaze. Eve finished her inspection and approached the counter, waiting patiently just outside the invisible circle of camaraderie. After a moment, Hank's story wound down and he finally glanced over, his eyes giving her a quick, dismissive appraisal. "Help you with something, little lady?" His tone was superficially polite, but underscored with the weary condescension of a man who believed he was about to waste his time. Eve simply nodded and slid a printed spec sheet across the polished glass. "I need a custom barrel replacement for an 12 Malawian Kwacha's SPR. It needs to be threaded for a surefire SOCOM suppressor. A 1-in-7 twist rate, match grade, if you have it in stock or can source it." Hank picked up the paper. His bushy eyebrows rose a fraction. He scanned the technical details, a smirk playing on his lips. "This is some mighty specific hardware," he said, looking past her. "Getting this for your husband? Boyfriend?" "It's for me," Eve stated, her voice calm and even. That one sentence was a spark in a tinderbox. Big Rick let out a short, sharp laugh. "And 12 Malawian Kwachas? What are you building, sweetheart, a loadout from Call of Duty?" Another voice from the group chimed in, "You know how it is. Watch one YouTube video, and suddenly everyone thinks they're an operator." Eve's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw her jaw tighten for a fraction of a second. Her hands, which had been resting on the counter, returned to her sides. Her posture, already perfect, seemed to solidify. Hank slid the paper back towards her, his smile now openly patronizing. "Look, no offense, but this isn't the place you come to for a pink pistol. What you're asking for, that's team-issue gear. Real-world mission stuff. Why don't you have the guy who's actually gonna be using it come down and talk to me?" "I know precisely what I need," Eve said, her voice still quiet but now clipped with steel. And I am prepared to pay for the quality of the work. Oh, I'm sure you are, Hank said, holding up his hands in a gesture of mock surrender that was anything but. But it's not about the money, miss. It's about knowing what you're handling. That rifle, it demands respect. It needs a serious shooter behind it. Most people who walk in here wouldn't know a gas block from a hole in the ground. The group chuckled again. Big Rick pantomimed cradling a rifle like a baby, rocking it back and forth. The laughter was easy, familiar, the sound of a private club reinforcing its own biases. For a brief second, as Eve reached for the spec sheet, her shirt shifted. A thin, metallic glint appeared at her collarbone, the faint outline of dog tags tucked beneath her shirt. Hank and the others didn't see it. Marcus did. His smile had vanished. It wasn't just the tags. It was her stance. Her feet were planted shoulder-width apart, her weight perfectly centered. She didn't fidget. She didn't shift. When they mocked her, her breathing hadn't hitched, her pupils hadn't dilated. It was the unnerving stillness of someone trained to function under extreme pressure, to observe and assess while being targeted. Tell you what, Hank said, still playing to his audience. There's an airsoft shop a few blocks down. They've probably got something more your speed. Lots of cool-looking replicas. Eve met his eyes. She held his gaze a second longer than was comfortable, a silent challenge that he was too arrogant to recognize. Finally, she slid the paper back into her cargo pants pocket. Thank you for your time, she said. The bell chimed her exit. The moment the door closed, the mockery erupted anew. Probably for some cosplay convention, one man snickered. Did you see how she looked at it? Big Rick added. Like it was gonna bite her. Hank went back to wiping down the already spotless counter, preening in the glow of his perceived victory. But Marcus wasn't listening. He stared at the door, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. She hadn't fought back. She hadn't argued. She had simply observed. She'd collected data and departed. The quiet professionalism of her retreat was more unsettling than any loud complaint could have been. Outside, Eve didn't fumble for her keys. She didn't check her phone. She walked with purpose to a black, nondescript Chevy Suburban with government plates caked in road dust. Sliding into the driver's seat, she picked up a secured satellite phone from the console and tapped a single contact labeled JOC Liaison. It connected instantly. This is Reed, she said. Her voice was different now. Colder. Devoid of any of the polite softness from the shop. Target supplier assessment is complete. Result, non-viable. Culture mismatch. Initiate Plan Bravo. Reroute the requisition through Logistics Depot 2, effective immediately. Out. She ended the call and placed the phone face down. Her gaze drifted back to the storefront of Valhalla Arms, her expression unreadable. Then, she shifted the Suburban into gear and pulled away from the curb, leaving nothing behind. Inside the shop, the atmosphere had returned to its lazy, self-congratulatory rhythm. Hank was telling another war story. Big Rick was laughing. The spec sheet Eve had brought in was now crumpled in a trash can behind the counter, dismissed and forgotten. Marcus, however, couldn't shake the feeling that they had just failed a test they didn't know they were taking. He picked up a box of ammunition, turning it over in his hands, his mind replaying Eve's unnerving calm. At precisely 10:26 a.m., the bell chimed again. Hank looked up, a welcoming spiel for another customer ready on his lips. The words died in his throat. What stepped through the door was not a customer. He was a force. A man in his late 20s, with a squared-away jaw and a fresh buzz cut. He wore Ranger Green Cry Precision Combat pants and a tight black t-shirt that stretched across a powerfully built torso. His Salomon boots made no sound on the floor mat, yet his presence seemed to suck the air from the room. His eyes, cold and methodical, did a single, swift scan of the shop, every exit, every person, every angle, before locking forward. The bell chimed again. A second man entered, an identical specter of coiled readiness. He took up a position to the left of the first. Then a third. A fourth. A fifth. A sixth. They filed in with eerie synchronicity, forming a perfect, evenly spaced line in front of Hank's counter. The jovial music playing from the overhead speakers suddenly sounded tinny and absurd. The easy banter vanished, replaced by a silence so absolute it felt heavy. It was the silence of a room that had instantly changed ownership. Big Rick, who had been leaning casually, straightened up as if called to attention. His eyes darted from the men's impassive faces to the small, embroidered patches on their chests. Not shiny, new patches, but weathered, salt-stained tridents. The mark of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Hank's mouth had gone dry. He blinked, trying to process the sudden, overwhelming shift in his own domain. Can I help you gentlemen?" he stammered. The second man in the line stepped forward. His movement was fluid, economical, utterly devoid of wasted motion. Without a word, he placed a folded piece of paper on the glass countertop. It was the same spec sheet. Uncrumpled. Pristine. Hank stared down at the paper, at the precise requirements for the 12 Malawian Kwachas SPR barrel, then back up at the 6 silent warriors. His heart hammered against his ribs. The smug pride he'd felt just an hour ago curdled into a cold, creeping dread. These men didn't need to speak. Their presence was a statement, a verdict. The room, his room, no longer belonged to him. It belonged to them. At 10:31 a.m., the bell chimed a seventh and final time. The 6 SEALs, as one, shifted their weight, their bodies parting like the sea to create a clear path from the door to the counter. Dr. Evelyn Reed stepped through. But it was not the woman in the plain wool shirt who had entered before. This was Lieutenant Commander Evelyn Reed, United States Navy. She wore the immaculate, razor-creased service dress whites of a commissioned officer. On her collar, the silver oak leaves of her rank gleamed under the shop's lights. Pinned precisely above her left breast pocket was a row of ribbons, a vibrant summary of a distinguished career. At the very top, set apart in a place of singular honor, was the deep blue and gold of the Navy Cross. She walked forward, her footsteps crisp and measured on the floorboards. The easy confidence Hank had mistaken for naivete was now revealed as the quiet authority of a seasoned commander. She stopped directly in front of him. The silence in the shop was now absolute, a ringing vacuum. Hank's face was pale, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of the counter. Big Rick had taken a half step back, trying to make himself smaller. Marcus stood by the ammo rack, his expression one of dawning, grim understanding. "Mr. Donovan," Eve began, her voice calm and clear, projecting effortlessly through the room. "I am Lieutenant Commander Evelyn Reed. I oversee Special Acquisitions and Mission Readiness for Naval Special Warfare Development Group." She let the title hang in the air for a moment. DevGru. SEAL Team 6. The elite of the elite. "Your shop was recommended," she continued, her tone professional, devoid of anger. "Word of mouth. A reputation for meticulous custom work. That's why I came here first, in person. I prefer to deal directly with veteran-owned businesses." She gestured to the crumpled paper still visible in the trash can. "That order I submitted this morning was not a hobbyist's wish list. It was for mission-critical components for my teams. When I specified a 1-in-7 twist rate and suppressor threading to sub-millimeter tolerances, I wasn't testing your knowledge, Hank. I was offering your business a qualification. Your workshop failed to pass." Hank opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His world had been turned inside out. The woman he dismissed as a gamer girl was a decorated combat commander who held the fate of a multi-million-dollar contract in her hands. The third SEAL in the line stepped forward and, with disciplined movements, placed 6 rifle cases on the counter. He opened one, revealing a stripped-down rifle, ready for the exact modifications she had requested. My team's budget for ordnance-related R&D and customization on the West Coast for the last fiscal quarter was 7 figures, Eve stated flatly. We believe in supporting the veteran community that we are a part of. She placed a business card on the counter. Our new primary armorer will be in touch with an alternate supplier. Thank you for your time. She turned to leave. Hank finally found his voice, a cracked whisper. Lieutenant Commander. I didn't know. Eve stopped at the door but didn't turn around. Her response was quiet, but it cut through him like a surgeon's scalpel. No, you didn't. Because you never thought to ask. She exited. The SEALs began to file out behind her, their movements as synchronized as their arrival. The last to leave, a Master Chief Petty Officer with a face like carved granite, paused and looked directly at Hank. That Navy Cross she wears, he said, his voice a low growl. She earned it in Afghanistan. Pinned down in a valley, she coordinated air and ground support that saved an entire reconnaissance platoon from being overrun. He let the words sink in. A Marine platoon. From the 1st Division. He held Hank's shattered gaze. She was saving your brothers, Gunny. Then he turned and pulled the door shut, leaving a silence that was heavier and more profound than any sound. The lights of Valhalla Arms were off, save for a single lamp casting a lonely cone of yellow light onto the main counter. It was nearly midnight. Hank Donovan sat on a stool, the shop's profound silence roaring in his ears. Eve's business card lay face up on the glass, an indictment. His gaze drifted to the wall of heroes behind the counter, framed photos of him and his men in Fallujah, unit flags, scribbled on base signs. He had always seen it as a shrine to service, to a brotherhood forged in fire. Tonight, it felt like a monument to his own hypocrisy. His eyes found a picture he hadn't truly looked at in years. A group photo from a joint training exercise. Standing slightly off to the side was a young captain, Isabella Rossi. She had been his company commander for 6 months. The first female CO he'd ever served under. He remembered the skepticism, the quiet jokes in the barracks. He had watched her, waiting for her to fail. She never did. He recalled a live-fire exercise where a terrified private's rifle had a catastrophic malfunction. The male lieutenant on the line had started screaming, making things worse. Major Rossi had simply walked over, her voice calm and low. She didn't yell. In seconds, using precise, expert movements, she cleared the weapon, spoke quietly to the trembling Marine, and had him back on the line, firing safely. She commanded respect without ever demanding it. And he had still dismissed her as good for a woman. The memory was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of him. He saw it now with sickening clarity. He hadn't just insulted Lieutenant Commander Reed. He had betrayed a fundamental code. He had judged the uniform, not the warrior wearing it. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over the number on the card. He pressed call. It rang twice before clicking to voicemail. He took a deep, shaky breath. Lieutenant Commander Reed, he said, his voice raw. This is Hank Donovan from Valhalla Arms. I'm calling to. He paused, searching not for the words, but for the integrity to say them. Today, I was out of line. I was arrogant. I used my experience as a shield for my own prejudice. I didn't listen. I didn't see you. I saw a stereotype I'd invented, and I failed to give you the respect you have earned 1,000 times over. He stared at his reflection in the dark glass case, barely recognizing the man looking back. I've dishonored myself and the uniform I once wore. My pride insulted the honor you won with your blood. I know an apology is just words, and words are cheap. But I needed you to know. I see it now. I see you. He swallowed hard. Thank you for your service. And, thank you for the lesson. He ended the call and slumped onto the stool. The shop didn't feel like his anymore. He walked to the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and for the first time in years, he locked the door not out of habit, but with the solemn weight of intent. A week later, the bell at Valhalla Arms chimed. Eve Reed stepped inside, dressed in the same civilian clothes as before. The few customers in the shop, including a now subdued Big Rick, fell silent. They nodded respectfully. "Ma'am." Hank stood straighter behind the counter. "Lieutenant Commander." "Mr. Donovan," she replied, her tone neutral. "You called." "I did," he said, his voice steady. He gestured to a meticulously crafted object sitting in a velvet-lined case on the counter. It wasn't a weapon. It was a complex piece of machinery, a high-precision sensor housing for a training simulator. "I spent the last week on this. Machined it to the specs from the online tender your logistics team posted. To prove I could do the work. No charge. It's not to fix what I did. It's to do right by the request." Eve stepped forward and examined the piece. Her expert eyes scanned the flawless finish, the microscopic tolerances. "This is exceptional work," she stated. "Trust isn't built in a day," Hank said. "I'm not asking for yours. I'm just trying to show that the man you met last week isn't the man I want to be." "Then it's up to you to ensure he isn't," Eve replied, but her eyes held a flicker of something other than disapproval. She looked at the housing again. "This isn't about friendship, Hank. This is a probationary contract. 2 more of these units. We will be reviewing every aspect, communication, turnaround, and quality control. 1 misstep, and it's over." "Understood," Hank said, a wave of relief washing over him. "I won't miss." Over the next few months, Valhalla Arms began to change. On the Wall of Heroes, new photos appeared. A framed picture of a female combat medic in Fallujah. An official portrait of Major Isabella Rossi. And in a prominent spot, a candid shot of Lieutenant Commander Reed briefing her team, her expression calm and focused. One afternoon, a young woman in her early 20s, hair in a tight bun, walked in. She looked nervous but determined. "Excuse me," she said to Hank. "I've been admitted to West Point. I ship out for Beast Barracks next month. I was hoping to learn a few things." Hank smiled, a genuine, welcoming smile. "You came to the right place," he said, then looked towards the back of the shop. "Actually, let me introduce you to someone who can help you better than I can." Eve, who was overseeing the delivery of the now completed project, walked over. "Lieutenant Commander," Hank said, his voice filled with a respect that was now second nature. "This young lady is Cadet Sarah Jenkins. She's on her way to the academy." Eve extended her hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Cadet," she said warmly. "Let's talk about responsibility." She led Sarah to a side counter, picked up a copy of the very spec sheet she had first brought into the shop, and began to explain. "Remember," she said, "your knowledge and your character are your only true credentials. Never let anyone else's prejudice define your worth." From behind the counter, Hank watched them, a mentor passing the torch to a new generation. The legacy of his shop was no longer just about the past. It was about building a better future. Respect is earned, not given. But sometimes, it has to be demanded. Hank learned that lesson. What about you? Have you ever completely misjudged someone based on a first impression? Share your story in the comments below. And as always, please comment with respect for everyone's experiences. Your story matters. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that make you think.